Ever get that feeling like you're drowning in information? News, social media, your own life even. So much noise. It's hard to see the forest for the trees. Well, on the deep dive, we try to cut through that, get to the core of things.
And you've certainly given me, well, us, a lot to unpack today. This material is wide-ranging, societal structures,
Hmm.
individual potential, even a touch of the cosmic.
Exactly. We're going deep on some big questions. Questions I bet a lot of us are wrestling with. Why does everything feel so complex? What's driving all the conflict we see? And most importantly, how can we as individuals even begin to make sense of it all? So in this deep dive, we're aiming for clarity, the core insights, the surprising connections, and yeah, maybe some actionable takeaways without overwhelming anyone. We're in this together, right?
Absolutely. Think of us as guides, navigating a complex landscape. Given the breadth of ideas, from social dynamics to, well, consciousness itself, we'll be painting with a broad brush at times. But that's how we start to see the big picture, how everything connects.
All right, so let's dive in. The first thing that really grabbed me was this idea about the social and moral environment we're swimming in. The source material argues that modern societies are so focused on basic needs, food, shelter, safety, that we might be neglecting something crucial, spiritual and moral development. Almost like we're stuck on autopilot, just trying to survive. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a critique of societal priorities.
Right.
If we're constantly focused on the material, on just getting by, where's the space for ethical growth, for deeper meaning? Maybe this focus on survival is feeding some of the conflict we see around us.
That's a great point. And the sources definitely don't shy away from the conflict. There's this observation of rising aggression across all kinds of groups, ethnic, religious, social. It's attributed to this feeling of division, like some are being left behind, humiliated even. And that fuels resentment, maybe even a desire for revenge.
And it's tied to this larger idea of a shift in values, particularly since the fall of the USSR. Traditional values, things like love of homeland, family bonds, spiritual seeking, they're supposedly being eroded, replaced by indifference, cynicism, materialism, even dishonesty is mentioned.
Yeah, and mass media gets a pretty harsh critique too. The sources paint it as almost deliberately undermining these traditional values, pushing violence, a cynical worldview, downplaying the importance of family. There's even this pointed phrase, animal sex without love, like a direct attack on what's seen as morally good.
It's a statement about the power of media, isn't it? What we consume shapes us, especially if it lacks a moral compass. So the source is raising a red flag. Is this the kind of content that uplifts us, builds a better society?
And then we come to this really strong statement from Achu. He compares the state of leadership, well, to a betrayal of God. He specifically calls out hypocrisy as a major sin. It's a serious indictment of the moral character of, well, those in charge.
Hypocrisy is particularly corrosive. It destroys trust. If leaders aren't walking the walk, how can society progress ethically, spiritually? So this quote is a wake-up call, a challenge to those in power.
And it's not just about the individuals in charge. The sources also argue that systems built on ranks and titles can actually lead to incompetence, to stagnation. The idea is that without a clear, unifying national purpose, society just drifts, bogged down by negativity and old grudges.
Right. If there's no shared vision, no higher ideal to strive for, people just get stuck in the past. Progress becomes impossible. And that's where the danger of the Xittacog comes in.
Ah, yes, the mind, this powerful analogy from Mr. Lema. He describes society devolving into a mindless crowd, not individuals thinking for themselves, but a mass of people driven by prejudice and blind obedience to authority, easily swayed by emotions, unable to reason. It's a little chilling how relevant that feels today, right?
The elite is a warning. When we stop questioning, when we just follow the crowd or those who claim authority, we lose something essential, the ability to think for ourselves, to be discerning.
And the source makes it clear it's not just the average person susceptible to this crowd mentality. Even the elite can fall into this trap. So it raises a big question. How do we choose our leaders? What are their motivations? Are they serving the people or just themselves?
Exactly. Who are these elites? What values guide them? The source is asking us to look beyond titles and positions, to scrutinize the character of those in power.
And tied to that is this concern about a lack of control over executive power. The sources describe a deep fear of making necessary changes, real reform, tackling corruption. It's like there's this paralysis, this inability to act even when things are clearly broken.
It's the fear of change, even when change is desperately needed. And that fear, it holds us back, allows problems to fester.
And this one really hit home for me, the idea that the intellectual potential of the people is being wasted. All these talented individuals who could be contributing, innovating, they're being ignored. The source argues that this inevitably leads to opposition, and even more worryingly, young people feeling alienated, like they have no voice.
Ignoring the intellectual capital of a nation is a huge loss. It breeds resentment, especially among the youth who feel their future is being stifled.
Finally, there's this almost mournful reflection on past democratic reforms. The sources argue that instead of building on what was good, these reforms actually squandered potential, led to a decline in chest and awardia, mind, honor, and conscience, a pretty scathing assessment of recent history.
There's a sense of disillusionment there, a feeling that the promise of these reforms wasn't fulfilled, that something essential was lost in the process.
So from this look at the social landscape, let's shift gears a bit to another kind of conflict the sources highlight: mental and informational warfare. They paint this picture of constant bombardment, media saturated with violence, cynicism, consumerism. And the argument is that this is especially damaging to young minds, those still forming their worldview.
The message here is clear. Media isn't passive. It shapes us. And if we're not discerning, if we just absorb everything uncritically, especially when we're young, it can warp our understanding of the world.
And it gets pretty intense with this phrase, "ewormy mental genocide." The idea that this negative influence is working from within, breaking down our shared culture, replacing it with something destructive.
Mental genocide is a powerful term. It underscores the perceived severity of this threat. The source is saying that what we allow into our minds can erode our very foundations.
Then there's this vivid image. These media images are like bombs for the brain, carrying these destructive ideas that take root. It's a reminder of how potent visual media can be.
And the impact can be long-lasting. Those bombs plant seeds. Seeds of negativity, of cynicism, even of violence. So what's the antidote?
Well, the sources say our strongest weapon is wickness, the ability to think critically, to analyze information logically, to be aware of the influences around us.
Critical thinking. Awareness. Those are our shields. They allow us to step back, to question what we're seeing and hearing, to not be swept away by the tide.
Then there's this interesting take on technology, specifically computerization. It's likened to a virtual drug. The idea is that people escape into these digital worlds when real life feels too hard. But this leads to a narrowing of experience, a diminished sense of responsibility.
It's a cautionary tale about our digital lives. Are we truly connecting or just retreating? Is technology making us more human or less?
And because we're increasingly living in these artificial environments, the sources argue that we're becoming less resilient, more susceptible to fear, to illness, almost like we're losing our connection to the natural world and to our own inner strength.
There's a cost to detaching from nature, a loss of grounding, and maybe, as the source suggests, a weakening of our natural defenses, both physically and mentally.
But here's the good news. The sources remind us that true strength comes from overcoming challenges, that facing difficulty is how we grow, how we build character.
Resilience isn't built in comfort. It's forged in the fire of adversity. Every challenge we overcome makes us stronger, more capable.
So, having explored these societal and mental challenges, let's turn to what the sources offer as a counterpoint, a path forward: spiritual and personal development. There's this beautiful idea that the meaning of life is to be needed by others, and when we live that way, there's this reciprocal energy, this support that comes from above.
It's a shift in focus, from self-preservation to contribution, from fear to love. And the source is saying when we align ourselves with that purpose, we tap into a greater power.
But there's also this concern that people have lost themselves. By focusing on the temporary, the fleeting, instead of drawing on the wisdom of past generations, this leads to a lack of moral grounding that Arafaz we talked about earlier.
It's the danger of losing our connection to something larger than ourselves, to those enduring values that have guided humanity for centuries. And without that grounding, we become adrift.
The sources draw a powerful contrast with the heroism of the Great Patriotic War, attributing that strength, that willingness to sacrifice, to this very lamb.
It's a reminder of what we're capable of when we're united by a common purpose, when we put the good of the whole above our own individual needs.
And there's real concern for the younger generation, growing up surrounded by materialism, lacking that core, conscience, shame, and moral awareness. And there's this rather cynical view attributed to Arafat that not everyone needs to be educated, who'll do the menial jobs, a pretty grim assessment of what's valued in society.
It raises questions about the purpose of education. Is it to create well-rounded individuals or just cogs in a machine? And whose interests does that serve?
Interestingly, the sources make this claim that our environment actually has a greater influence on our behavior than our genes do. Like who we are is shaped more by the world around us than our inherent predispositions.
It highlights the power of nurture over nature. The environment we create, the values we instill, those have a profound impact on how people develop.
And building on that, there's a clear rejection of Western orders and laws, seen as promoting immoral behavior. It's like a clash of values, a desire to adhere to a different moral code.
It speaks to a desire for autonomy, for defining one's own path based on what's seen as right and good, rather than blindly following external dictates.
This all leads to a call for a strategic plan of spiritual rebirth of the peoples of Russia, a deliberate, top-down effort to address these perceived moral shortcomings.
It's a call for action, for a conscious effort to revitalize the nation's spiritual and ethical foundations.
And crucial to that is leaders who truly understand and work with the soul of the people. It's about more than just policy. It's about connecting with those deeper values and aspirations.
Leadership must be grounded in empathy, in a true understanding of the people's needs, not just their material needs, but their spiritual needs as well.
There's even talk of amending the Constitution, and this strong argument against blindly adopting Western liberal recommendations, especially when it comes to state ideology.
It's a push for self-determination, for forging a path that's authentic to one's own values and history, rather than conforming to external pressures.
And this culminates in a call for a state ideology rooted in justice, goodness, love for the people and the homeland, and a respect for cultural heritage, drawing from the various spiritual traditions within Russia.
It's a vision for a unified society, bound together by shared values that uplift and inspire.
And it all starts with MLS justice in everything. That's the foundation.
Justice as the bedrock. Without it, nothing else can truly flourish.
Then there's this idea about the power of positive images. Role models who embody shoot, smart, strong, and independent qualities. It's about providing inspiration, showing what's possible.
People need something to aspire to. Images that embody the ideals we strive for. They can be powerful motivators.
And these images, these inji, they actually shape behavior. The source says true motivation comes from personal interest or astva, a conscious need.
It's about tapping into those inner drives, helping people recognize what truly matters to them, what they want to create in their lives.
But there's also this worry about the devaluation of the country's image, the Agnan distortion of its history.
It's about protecting one's heritage, ensuring that the stories we tell about ourselves are true and uplifting, that they honor the past while pointing towards a better future.
And this concern extends to language. There's this worry about the dominance of English and the potential negative effects of just copying Western educational systems. They even use the term slaves, referencing the origin of pedagogue, a pretty strong statement about cultural homogenization.
It's a defense of cultural diversity, of the right to think and learn in ways that are authentic to one's own heritage, not just becoming a copy of someone else's model.
The role of political parties is addressed too. They're seen as mechanisms for regulating social interests, but the source criticizes their current lack of real ideology.
Political engagement should be driven by principles, by a clear understanding of what's best for society, not just a grab for power.
Which brings us back to the need for ideological programs based on self-knowledge and a deep understanding of the world.
Effective action requires a solid foundation. We need to understand ourselves, our values, and the world around us before we can enact meaningful change.
And there's this very practical point about controlling those involved in big economic activities as a way to combat corruption.
Corruption undermines everything. It erodes trust, stifles progress. So accountability is key, especially when it comes to those who wield economic power.
There's also this call for a oigya, a collective of creative individuals, people who can generate new ideas, drive innovation.
Harnessing creativity is essential for progress. We need thinkers, innovators, people who can imagine new possibilities and bring them to life.
And it all points to the need for a clear plan of reform, priority, medium-term, and long-term actions.
Change doesn't happen overnight. It requires a strategic approach, a roadmap that outlines the steps, the timelines, the resources needed to achieve our goals.
And to guide this reform, the sources offer 7 core principles. Prioritizing spiritual and physical health rooted in erokus, continuous personal development, eliminating negativity, encouraging collective action for the nation's well-being, peaceful conflict resolution, fostering realistic expectations and supporting individual growth, and overcoming fear. It's a pretty holistic set of guidelines.
These principles provide a moral compass, a framework for building a healthier, more harmonious society, both individually and collectively.
There's even this suggestion to create a published work outlining these principles, to make them accessible to everyone.
Knowledge should be shared. These ideas, these values, they need to reach as many people as possible.
And to truly bring these ideas to life, to activate them, the sources talk about Osilamaya, awakening the social energies within the people, through knowledge and understanding.
Empowerment comes from knowledge. When people understand the challenges, the possibilities, they're more likely to engage, to contribute to positive change.
There's also this emphasis on changing how wealth is distributed to create a more equitable foundation for everyone to thrive.
Economic inequality breeds instability. For a society to truly flourish, everyone needs the opportunity to develop their potential.
And finally, there's this focus on creating positive cultural content, uplifting songs, meaningful poems, inspiring films, all promoting the ideals of a future Russia.
Art and culture have immense power. They shape our perceptions, our values, our aspirations. So it's crucial that we create content that uplifts, that inspires, that shows us the best of who we can be.
Okay, let's shift gears again to something a little more, well, cosmic. The sources delve into this fascinating idea of the individual's place in the universe. And the concept of fate, it starts with this premise that we, humans, and the universe itself are made of the same fundamental stuff, and we both operate as self-regulating systems guided by immuable ethics. It's a pretty profound sense of interconnectedness.
It's suggesting that the same principles that govern the universe also govern us. That ethics isn't just a human construct, but a fundamental law of existence.
And then they introduce this idea of a supreme creative force, you can call it God, the creator, whatever resonates, and the EAT, the matrix of creation, as the mechanism through which everything came into being.
It's a framework for understanding creation, a way of conceptualizing the source of everything and the process through which it manifests.
Within this framework, the soul is seen as a creative instrument, tasked with accumulating positive Hestia energy through our experiences and emotions. And this energy is vital for maintaining balance in the universe. It gives our lives a kind of cosmic significance.
It elevates the individual. We're not just random beings, but active participants in a cosmic dance. Our experiences, our emotions, they have a ripple effect.
Consciousness itself is described as the tool the soul uses to shape the quality of these subtle energies. It's the driving force of our spiritual evolution.
Consciousness is the bridge between the material and the spiritual. Through it, we refine the energy we accumulate, we grow, we evolve.
And the physical body, that's the instrument for developing consciousness. Through whereas conscious needs, it's through our physical existence that our awareness takes shape.
Our bodies are not separate from our souls. They're the vehicles through which we experience the world, learn, and grow.
The flightus, the mind that's seen as belonging more to the physical realm, focused on serving the body's needs, even justifying those needs with moral rationale.
The mind is a powerful tool, but it can be easily swayed by the body's desires. So the source is highlighting the need for discernment, for aligning the mind with the soul's purpose.
Attention that's defined as the focusing of consciousness on a specific frequency. And our aura's desires, those are seen as the mechanism through which the matrix of creation directs our attention. That's a pretty big idea, right? Like our desires might not always be entirely our own.
It raises questions about free will. How much control do we truly have over our desires? Are we being influenced by something larger than ourselves?
The sources say that in our physical reality, this obesilagen is subordinate to the body, and the body itself is subordinate to the Yame matrix. So our attention is often mechanical, like we're operating on autopilot.
It's the default mode of existence. We react to stimuli, we follow routines, often without much conscious thought.
But there's also this concept of a plan, a larger framework where everything is interconnected, including our human free will. But within certain boundaries, it's not absolute freedom, but a sphere of choice within a greater design.
It's a balance between predestination and free will. We have the power to choose, but within the parameters of a larger plan.
And when we actively focus on fulfilling our Arab desires, we create soporia thought forms. These are like energetic blueprints.
Our thoughts have power. They're not just fleeting things. They carry energy, and that energy can manifest in our lives.
The sources say these superior desires are the very foundation of our personality, and the thoughts that stem from them shape our reality, often operating from the aletheia, the subconscious.
Our desires, our deepest longings, they shape who we are. And those desires are often rooted in the subconscious, operating beneath our conscious awareness.
This might explain why just wishing for something doesn't always work. The sources say only deeply ingrained thought forms actually manifest. They even connect this to the saying, "Show through tres." Promise things take 3 years. It's about the time it takes for those beliefs to truly solidify.
Superficial desires, fleeting thoughts, they don't have the same power. Real manifestation requires deep conviction, a sustained focus.
And even when our thoughts might pull our attention away, our physical body remains strongly influenced by the issue matrix. Our experience of reality is grounded in the body and our feelings.
We're not just minds floating in a void, we're embodied beings. Our feelings, our senses, those are the foundation of our experience.
So it's important to align our OSHA desires with our chosen OSHA wife goal. Otherwise, we just waste energy on fleeting things and potentially trigger that natural selection we talked about earlier.
Living with purpose, that's the key. When our desires are aligned with our soul's purpose, we use our energy wisely. We create a life of meaning.
The sources warn that making materialism our main goal can lead to destruction, an empty soul, stress, depression, and moral decay.
Chasing after material possessions will never bring lasting fulfillment. It's a hollow pursuit. True wealth lies within.
They say the path to true fulfillment lies in the renewal of the soul, through faith, love, and the pursuit of truth.
It's a spiritual path, a journey of self-discovery and connection to something greater than ourselves.
Now let's get into the algorithm for forming destiny. The core idea is that everything we do, everything we become, starts with thought. And thought is a form of energy. These thoughts create our popo beliefs, which then generate our actions. So to change our behavior, to change our destiny, we need to change our beliefs.
It's a powerful concept. Our thoughts create our reality. So if we want to change our lives, we need to start with our thinking.
And here's a really wild idea. The sources say our brains don't actually generate thoughts on their own. Instead, they act like receivers, picking up thoughts from the surrounding space. It's kind of a mind-blowing concept.
It challenges our conventional understanding of thought. Where do our thoughts come from? Are we truly the authors of our own minds, or are we influenced by something larger?
These thoughts, they carry an energetic signature, and they attract similar vibrations from our own soul, our biofield, based on their frequency, like attracts like on an energetic level. And the quality of these thoughts is influenced by what ancient Vedic teachings called the light and dark forces of the cosmos. It's a big picture view, right?
It suggests that the battle between good and evil isn't just a human story. It's playing out on a cosmic scale, and our thoughts are part of that battleground.
The sources describe the principles of Abhelu light worlds as love, compassion, and creation. And the principles of H or dark worlds are capture, subordination, and use. It's this constant interplay between these forces that influences the very thoughts we encounter.
We have a choice. Which side do we align with? Do you choose thoughts that uplift and create, or thoughts that diminish and destroy?
This battle for the human soul, it's ongoing, but the sources say we often fail to see it. We're so caught up in our own little worlds, we miss the bigger picture.
Awareness is key. We need to pay attention to what we allow into our minds, to be discerning.
And the way our soul resonates with those external thoughts, that's influenced by our wood karma and agenetics. They act like filters, allowing in only those vibrations that match our soul's frequency.
Our past experiences, our ancestry, they shape how we perceive the world, what we're drawn to, what repels us.
The soul itself is described as this energetic matrix, holding the imprints of past lives, karma, and hereditary memory from our bloodline genetics. And it's filled with our emotions, our feelings in response to the world, like a living record of our journey.
It's a beautiful way of looking at the soul, as this tapestry woven from our experiences both in this life and beyond.
The askew, our social environment, that plays a huge role in shaping our values and needs, which in turn attracts certain thoughts, which become beliefs. It highlights how much our surroundings influence who we are.
We're social creatures. We absorb the values, the beliefs of those around us, especially when we're young. So it's crucial to be mindful of the environments we create, the influences we expose ourselves to.
But the sources also point out that with a strong sowish, this ancestral memory, we can actually manage the influence of the fawish. We can break free from those imposed stereotypes and rules.
It's about connecting to something deeper, to the wisdom of our ancestors, to our own inner knowing. That can give us the strength to resist negative influences.
So back to thoughts. They're described as an energetic substance with specific frequency characteristics, and they combine based on those frequencies and their energetic sign, whether they're aligned with creation or destruction, to form these field formations called shafa, which are basically these thought clusters with either positive or negative orientations.
It's like a collective consciousness. Thoughts with similar frequencies, similar intentions, they clump together. And these thought clusters, these tucho, can have a powerful influence on individuals.
And again, our brains don't create these thoughts, they just receive them. The kind of thoughts we attract depends on the vibration of our own biofield, which is determined by the quality of our soul, our lifestyle, our habits, and so on.
It's a two-way street. We attract what we resonate with. So if we want to invite positive thoughts, we need to cultivate a positive inner state.
So if we want to avoid problems, the sources say we need to consciously work on changing our subial lifestyle and our yuno way of thinking.
It's about taking responsibility for our inner world, choosing thoughts and actions that align with our highest good.
Now, let's explore the hour, the mechanism of the generation and realization of desires. Again, the brain is likened to a radio receiver, picking up lumped thought forms from the multitude floating around us. And every thought we emit, it persists as a distinct energy field.
We're constantly swimming in a sea of thoughts, and those thoughts, they have a real impact. They shape our reality.
These thought forms attract similar vibrations from our soul based on the principle of awas like attracts like. Our lifestyle, actions, vices, words, beliefs, even our blood type and the environment we inhabit, they all contribute to the kind of thoughts we attract.
It's holistic. Everything is interconnected. Our physical body, our thoughts, our emotions, our environment. It all plays a role.
And these thought forms, they can be either low frequency associated with destruction or high frequency associated with creation. And which one we resonate with depends on the sign positive or negative of the thoughts we've been dwelling on.
Our thoughts are like magnets. They attract experiences that match their frequency. So if we focus on negativity, we'll attract more of that. But if we cultivate positivity, our lives will reflect that.
The source says that to manifest our desires, to turn those oaths into reality, we need to charge them with energy, with a clear intention, with visualization.
It's not enough to just wish for something. We need to put energy behind it, to see it clearly in our mind's eye, to feel it as if it's already happening.
But they also caution that if we don't see results within 2 or 3 months, we start to accumulate stress and doubt, which can block manifestation.
It's about persistence, but also about surrender. We do our part, we put the energy out there, and then we trust the process.
The sources remind us that true happiness is an internal state, not something we find in material possessions. They quote Achergis, who said that the soul is more valuable than the entire world.
Happiness comes from within, from aligning ourselves with our soul's purpose, from living in accordance with our values. It's not something we acquire, it's something we cultivate.
And our main purpose, the source says, is to develop the soul, to grow spiritually, to be needed by others. That's our divine mission.
We're here to learn, to grow, to contribute, to make the world a better place through our presence.
And they make this really interesting point. They say we need to me, realize our own value before we can truly achieve anything in life.
Self-worth is essential. If we don't believe in ourselves, in our own inherent value, we'll always be seeking validation from external sources, and that will never truly satisfy us.
They talk about this quantum transition that's happening and how the world is changing rapidly, and many people are struggling to keep up. They're clinging to old ways of thinking, resistant to the new.
Change is inevitable, and those who embrace it, who adapt, will thrive. Those who resist, who cling to the old, will struggle.
The source says, those who achieve awareness, they'll be able to navigate these changes, while those who are still asleep, they'll face hardship.
Awareness is like waking up, seeing things clearly, understanding the forces at play. It allows us to make conscious choices, to move with the flow of life.
And they highlight the importance of having a goal, something to strive for. But it needs to be spiritualized, grounded in goodness. That's how we get support from the universe.
Our goals should be aligned with our soul's purpose, not just about personal gain, but about making a positive impact.
And at interest, that's the driving force, the energy source, that passion, that curiosity. That's what keeps us moving forward.
When we're engaged, when we're passionate about something, we tap into a boundless source of energy, and that energy can fuel incredible achievements.
The psyche, it regulates our life energy, our balance, our harmony, our mood, and we form a whole worldview based on our perceptions, our self-image, our values, our actions.
Our worldview is the lens through which we see the world. It shapes our beliefs, our actions, our experiences.
And this sphere of worldview, it gets projected outward. It influences the reality we experience. And when many people share a similar worldview, it can manifest on a larger scale.
Our thoughts create our reality. And when many people share the same thoughts, the same beliefs, they can create a shared reality.
But if we're unable to achieve our goals, if we keep running into obstacles, we start to accumulate stress, doubt, even depression. And the source says this is because we're resonating with negative ego.